Welcome to the EntrepreNoob podcast, a podcast about the ups and downs, risks and rewards of business. Each week, you will hear about the unexpected victories and epic failures experienced by your co-hosts and invited guests throughout their journey of entrepreneurship. Grab your notepad and thinking cap as they explore ideas and expose challenges faced by aspiring and seasoned entrepreneurs. And now, introducing Adam Bussey and Steven Johnson, your co-hosts and humble test subjects.
Hey, this is Steven.
This is Adam. Welcome back to the EntrepreNoob podcast.
One of my good friends is a guest tonight. He's an 18-year veteran of the U.S. Army. He was an MMA fighter and owner of Grapplers by Design Gym located in Concord, North Carolina. He was owner of that for 6 years. Now he is a police officer for the city of Kannapolis. His name is Ramsey Nimer. Ramsey, what's going on, man?
What's going on, guys? I'm on a podcast. I feel famous.
Hey, Ramsey, how you doing?
Good, bud. How are you?
Good, man. Good to meet you, or good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to hear you. That's right. Good to hear you.
So what we got, Steven? Are we gonna that's quite a list of accolades you got there. Intimidated me a little bit.
Yeah, well.
No, it's really cool on paper. It's only cool on paper. If you meet me in real life, you're gonna be like, no, sir.
Now you know that ain't true. So, me and Ramsey met whenever we were in basic law enforcement training together. We started off the class, I believe it was a spring class, and probably for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was sitting over on the left side of the classroom, and he was sitting over on the right side of the classroom. I kept noticing this one guy, man, like, he would always be answering all the questions, and I would be looking over there like, who does this guy think he is? About 2 or 3 weeks into it, we got out and started doing some PT and started competing against each other, and ever since then, I've changed my mind about the guy. He ain't so bad after all. He's a pretty cool dude. So
you guys are both.
I appreciate those very kind words.
Both on the police force together, right?
Yeah, but the thing about it was when we were in BLET together, once we kind of started working together and studying together, I started to realize that you got a lot of good qualities and a lot of things you can learn from. So I found myself sitting there a lot of times in class when we had breaks and stuff. We'd be talking about his time in the military and leadership and a lot of different stuff like that. So pretty cool. So Ramsey, wow. We got a few questions for you tonight, man. Hopefully you can help some people out with their business or whatever they got going on.
All right, I don't know anything about business, but yes, I am prepared to help.
Well, you was in business for 6 years.
I was, but I was in the black. I mean, that's what I can say. I was in the black, but it wasn't because of my business acumen. It's just, you know, it's a small niche, like running a gym and dealing with fighters. They're seeking for something, you know, and I feel like, you know, maybe at least some of the times I fit that bill.
I feel like one of the cool things about bringing you on here with your background is because, I mean, we're the EntrepreNoob, so we don't have much success with it. We're just dumb enough to keep trying, I guess. That's how I feel about myself. But
that's life, brother. That is life.
When you, yeah, military and fighting has that. The core principles that business requires. The business itself is, you know, I think it's a specialized niche for someone who, you know, if you want to do it. I mean, I wouldn't tell anybody they should, although I think it's extremely entertaining. It's definitely a niche, you know, like, yeah, I want to put myself through this. But I kind of see that when people, you know, want to be fighters, you know what I mean? I'm going to put myself through this, physically beat myself up, and, you know, but the pursuit is worth it, you know. So it's cool.
It is an experience.
It's cool to ask these questions and grill you a little bit, and then we'll try to make the application. I think the application to business is going to be obvious. So,
Well, Ramsey, let's start with a little background, man. Tell us about your childhood and your experiences and how you got into MMA fighting.
Okay, well, that's a panacea of a whole bunch of stuff, but I had a pretty rough childhood. I won't go into details, but I ended up at Hartselle Community, which is an alternative school, and I also went to Stonewall Jackson because I was not a good boy, and I was bullied when I was a kid, pretty bad, and I'm sure a lot of people have war stories about being tormented in middle and high school, but I did have it pretty rough, and it's funny when my mom and my dad separated and my dad left. My dad's a Muslim. He moved up to Dearborn, Michigan. I'm sure that's a whole other type of podcast. But when he left, I was pretty angry and started lashing out, which is how I started getting in trouble. And I was just done being picked on, and I just ended up fighting a whole lot. And I wasn't predatory. I wasn't super aggressive, but I would definitely react. And it's weird because even in all those scenarios, like, I'm proud of the fact that most of the fights and most of the things that I got in trouble for were defending somebody else. So it's bad, but I'm proud of that. Even as a troubled youth, I was proud of that.
Yeah.
So
would you say any of the things that you learned from that has been a positive thing that has helped you, with what you're doing now? I'm sure being able to control that and the skills you learned from MMA is really helping you with what you're currently doing now.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I think the way it helps me the most, just being as a police officer, let alone fighting, I can empathize with some of these young men that are angry and they don't know why, and they don't know why things aren't going the way that they view life should be going. So a lot of times I can, and I'm not singing my own praises, I mean, it's really a proxy of the community that I'm in too, but I can establish a rapport with somebody that I have nothing in common with at all, and it's just about showing that I'm willing to listen, and I'm not it's not a vacuum, so I'm not just this A-type character, and I've always been a goody two-shoes, and now I'm the police. I've ran from the police and I fought the police too, before I became the police.
Do you think that having that high level of skill when it comes to martial arts, does that give you a confidence or just a calm feeling that probably the average person wouldn't have?
I do, for a variety of practical reasons, but I think just because of what was inculcated in me in the military, moving forward, fear be damned, just keep moving forward. I think I would probably carry myself the same way, except knowing how to do some of the stuff that the art has taught me means that it's real instead of just faking it and moving forward.
Yeah.
I find that the going through some stuff is what actually changes you and turns you into someone who can empathize, and so many people do just get bitter, act out, and being able to experience that and then to pull yourself through it and actually find some good out of it. Those are the stories that you actually want to hear, that something turned out and that someone was, you hate for anybody to go through it, but those trials actually what makes a person,
Oh yeah, that and hitting rock bottom and failing a million times, and it makes you learn, and if it doesn't, then you stymie your own growth.
That's EntrepreNoobs. We know what the bottom feels like.
Yes, that's where we start.
That's right.
It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I won't name drop who it was, and it was talking about failure. Most of these people that have these large empires and are financially very successful, they've got a litany of just failure after failure after failure until they learn and adapt and achieve. So I guess it does relate. That sort of makes sense.
On that topic, what is your worst failure that you think is something that has helped you the most to get where you are now?
Oh, my worst.
Most memorable.
Well, I'm gonna stick with worst because I had an idea of what was going to be discussed, So in my mind, I sort of went through, well, what could apply to that, and I almost didn't include this, but I was promoted very early in the military. I was a very hard charging guy, very intense and believed what I was doing, and I was very young when I enlisted. So having leadership over anywhere from 5 to 7 people at 19, and not just like leadership in a professional environment, but at the line where that's what we call where the infantry is. You're not just in charge of a job, you're in charge of people's lives. They can't get a loan unless I approve it. It's a very different lifestyle. And I was ready for it in a combat scenario, but when it came to the more life-based element, I may not have been as ready as I probably should have been, and I missed a whole bunch of clues. I love all my soldiers, but just sort of what we've talked about, without being on the podcast, people are my people, and then people aren't my people. And as a leader, you can't really do that. And I did. And one of these kids, a good kid, was going through a whole bunch of stuff at home. We just got back from deployment, so he was suffering from a whole bunch of, and I wouldn't even say PTSD, but just dealing with the stuff that we did. And I saw all the signs, and I don't know if it didn't register, or if because he wasn't, quote, my people, I didn't pay attention, but the long and short of it was he ended up trying to kill himself. And he wasn't successful, but he was hospitalized, and it took that. I mean, that was a very dynamic failure. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it took seeing that to make me into a better leader. So now, like on B squad, where I'm leaving and going to this new squad at the agency, I'm like the dad. Hey, are you okay? Or remember to do your test, do this. And I'm all those lessons that I learned as a very young, stupid, testosterone-filled leader, now with a little bit of wisdom and experience, I'm trying to inculcate it at the squad level. So I definitely learned a lot from that. I took a lot away from that.
Yeah. Well, leadership, I think that's really cool, and that was one of the things I did want to ask you about. And how do you feel, like, is it easier for you to be a leader in different situations for you now after having that position when you were in the military?
Yeah, and I'm not trivializing leadership in any form, but it's different when you're a leader and you deal with people at work, and then you go home and that's it. But if somebody gets in trouble, as in the military as a first line supervisor, they have to call me. So I'll get a call from a sergeant major and the MP because one of my guys got a DUI, and that means at 2 a.m. I'm leaving my family and I'm going in there, and I've got to be up at 4 for PT. So I'm not going to say it's easier, but the workload for a leader on this side is more manageable for me than in the uniform on that side. Very, very difficult, hard to manage.
Wow. I was going to ask you, one of the questions I had for you is, how do you balance the discipline and a relaxed personal life? Because with your background, pushing 10X, Stephen gives me a hard time. Grant Cardone's book 10X, he's telling me I need to go back and reread it. But with your background, owning a business, being in the military, and having the experience that you have in martial arts, did you find it hard to balance those? And if it was difficult, what did you use to manage that? Or what would you recommend someone to do to find that balance?
Yeah, as soon as you started asking the question, my thoughts immediately went to being a father of all things. I was a very intense young man, and I had children very early in the event that I mean, not to be morbid, but maybe I was going to die on deployment, so I wanted to have my kids out there. And I was not a good father. For the first 2 years of my firstborn's life, I was very impatient. I didn't know how to connect, and I was very good at one aspect of my life, which was the professional military guy, but then on the more important side, which is, you know, a family and being a husband and being a father, I was not good at it. And I don't know if it's just a time thing. I would imagine that if you talk to any parent and you ask them if they're a good parent, they want to say yeah. But I think if they really analyze it, they're probably going to be like, nah, I struggle.
Yeah, you're judging me for trying to be a parent, or am I a good parent?
Right, yeah, right. So, I failed a lot, you know, and I was very short, and I probably whooped too hard and was too stern, and you know, and I'd like to say that now I have a great relationship with my boys, you know, and we're not friends, but I'm sort of like a mentor to them, and I want them to come and talk to me about stuff, but I didn't get there until I failed a lot. But the one thing that did help me to transition from being very, very stern and very, very intense and very oriented to, you know, you can't die, move forward, lead your guys, mission accomplishment, and it was, you know, martial arts. It's having an outlet.
Yeah.
Having anything that can burn off some of that, I don't know, accumulated testosterone, that unhappiness that young men have. I don't know, but that definitely was my go-to, as opposed to drinking or something, you know.
I found that that's something I found actually in business for me, and why I recommend it for men in general, to at least experience it, because it's an adventure all day, every day. It never goes. I mean, it's an ongoing fight. You know, you can go to sleep thinking about it, get up thinking about it, and it like never turns off, which is why I also would say it's not for everybody. But it is a game that just, once you start playing it, you know, you can give it 100 or 20% or whatever. It's just always there, and it takes up and it uses some of that excess energy that our society seems to leave unspent so many times, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Some of that, our minds are powerful, man. It computes. It's got 5 senses. It's taking in all this data, stores all this data, and half the time we don't even begin to challenge it. So finding a way to give that challenge a lot of times is something I highly recommend. Business is a good one for sure.
I can see the correlation, man. I definitely think, and I'm not saying male or female or whatever, but I can only speak to young men. Like, young men need challenges to focus themselves and move forward, because if not, then you're just, you are going to spend that energy somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's going to manifest itself somehow, some way. And why not put it towards something that's productive, that's, you know, either employing somebody else or bringing in an income, or anything. But
that's right.
Yeah, young men definitely need it.
When it comes to the challenges, for me, I've found that anytime I start something new, if it's something I'm excited about, I'm going 90 miles an hour for like the first little bit of time, and then it seems like I kind of stall out, and then I have to fight to find motivation just to maintain that level of energy. I feel like if I maintained the same level I have when I first start something, I could kill it. Is that something that you ever experienced with new stuff you tried?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's just, I don't think that's an oddity. I think that's life. You know, I excel at, you know, I was a mid-level fighter. You know, I did okay, but I'm really, really good at coaching, game planning, connecting with people, seeing their motivation, and I love it. I'm very, very passionate about that. And it's interesting because even if I know, I'm going to throw a name out. If I know Michael, so I know Michael, I know his motivation, I know what makes him tick, and I know how hungry he is. And we start a fight camp. A fight camp can be anywhere from 4 weeks, which I would not advise, to 8 weeks. You know, we start fight camp as soon as we start. His energy's high. You know, he's strict on his diet. You know, everything's rocking and rolling. He looks great. And right around week 3 or 4, it's a grind, and motivating through that is art. Not a lot of people would say that in the fight game, but it is art. It's navigating. I say man, I've only trained one woman in my whole life in terms of fighting. Self-defense a lot, but in terms of fighting, only one woman. So in the man, that motivation is going to wane. So it's either going to be based on his pride or he truly wants to do it. And if they truly want to do it, he's going to push forward in it. But it is a difficult prospect. And some don't. A lot of people come by and, you know, they would want to fight and they want to do this. And I'd be like, all right, we'll just mirror this guy. He's got a camp coming up, mirror it. And in week 2, they're like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's and again, it's just a grind, and you either choose to move forward or you don't. And I think more often than not, we have to consciously choose to be uncomfortable and push forward. Because if it were easy, I mean, I just, and I'm sure everybody said this before, everybody would do it. It's just so easy. Probably the first 2 weeks it is, but after that, man, it's a grind, and only the really, really dedicated people are going to continue to rise to the top.
I heard a controversial. Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I was just going to ask, is there a time, like, you know, so you grind like crazy for, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then you kind of slow down a little bit. Is there a time where if you do grind for the next couple weeks, you get back on track and you're good to go, or is it that pretty much your honeymoon phase where after that it's grinding from here on out? Or do you kind of hit your stride and then maybe you start seeing results and now it's easier for you to keep that energy up?
Yeah, I do think it depends on the goal. So, like, if the goal is weight loss, and that's real big for fighters, it's you know, you got to make your weight, and that's an art in itself. So when you start seeing those pounds drop, you know, yeah, you know, that's your motivation. But I do think that you have to do it so many times to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And it sounds sort of counterintuitive, and I'm not trying to, you know, do like the Confucian thing, but if you get comfortable being uncomfortable, then you're going to be comfortable. So if you do one camp and you experience one time, or actually I'm gonna take a camp away because that's complicated. If you're gonna do, like, I'm gonna explain to you real quick about like doing a water cut. So I have my fighters diet down, and then I can guarantee 7 to 12 pounds in, let's say, 3 hours doing like a water immersion bath or just sweating. And you do it one time and you're like, holy crap, it's a horrible process. And it is. It's not comfortable. I recommend anybody try it, and you'll get to 6 pounds and be like, I'm dying. But once you do it and you realize I can do it, I'm not going to die. I trust my coach. I trust the process. And then, you know, you'll hear wrestlers or some of my fighters say, yeah, I can guarantee, and if you give me 3 hours, I can guarantee 17 pounds. That's 17 pounds in 3 hours. That's a lot of water coming out of your body. But they're comfortable being uncomfortable. They've done it before. So I do think there is a honeymoon phase, and then it's just a grind. But that's for one term. But let's say, you know, you're doing 3 camps. On that third camp, it's just routine. I've been here before. You know, I hit a plateau. I've got to suck this up. I've got to move forward. And then you get comfortable in that uncomfortableness. And it's a matter of you doing it over and over and over again.
Well, that's good news. Apply that. You can apply that to business. I mean, for anybody who's starting a new business, of course they're going to be very excited. You know, they've got a new product or service or something they've created. They love it. They get started. They're going crazy. And then a couple months down the road, they start bogging down. They just don't have that same energy. But if they know that if they can just fight long enough, eventually, you know, they'll finally get where they want to be. But there's that one time where you have to fight and grind. If you can just make it through that, you'll be good. You'll be smooth sailing.
Yep, putting that head down and putting in work, I think, is magic. I really do mean that word. I do think it is magic. Something happens in your brain, at least for a young man, that it just sort of clicks. If you stop talking, stop thinking about all this other garbage that can go wrong, put your head down, and then grind against what's pushing against you. I do think there's some magic in there for young men, and on an unrelated note, I think most young men don't have these outlets in their life, which is why we have some of the problems that we see now. Yeah. No kid's putting his head down and grinding, you know.
I had a question. I feel like we're kind of on the topic, but what's the short of this? It was what's the best way to start a new challenge or start something new that challenges you for a lot of time or a lot of effort? What's the best way to launch that? And it seems like, I'll say what you guys just discussed there, that it would be to start it and basically experience the honeymoon, push through that first little slump and get onto the other side of that. Would you say that was the best way to start something, or is there a mindset that you need to get into long before any of that, like a bigger goal or something further down the line? I don't know.
I can imagine it can be both. I do imagine that, but I would say, like, again, I'm other than my gym, I don't have a lot of experience in business per se, but I do know, like, I follow social media, I watch all these people, and everybody's starting businesses left and right, and I think once they realize, I'm gonna have to do what? How many hours a week?
Yeah, that's what I'm so excited about you being on here, because business, I see it as complete discipline. It's either you got it or you don't, or you're getting it or you're working on it. If you don't have it, it's going to show up somewhere. So
Yep, and you'll find yourself wanting. So I do think, if you choose to do something, and you just make a conscious, like, I'm just going to do it, hell or high water, it doesn't matter what it is, I'm just going to do it. And maybe that end goal in the process of you gaining that discipline might change. So just to quantify it with something sports. So I want to do a triathlon. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I never make it to doing a triathlon, but I've worked so hard getting to that point that, I ran a marathon, or, I swam for, however far, and I've never done that before. Goals will be achieved regardless of the outcome at the end. So even if it were, I'm going to start this business, whatever, make a whatchamacallit, whatever it is. Okay, so you get so far down and you're still grinding, and maybe that goal doesn't materialize, but it will likely, and it, like we talked about earlier, all these successful people have this failure. Well, it's not just I try this and I fail. I tried this, failed, and learned something.
I feel like the work that I've done, like, for fun, that wasn't, maybe it wasn't for a client, or
my brother always says there's no
wasted
wasted
work.
I don't know who he got it from or what book it came from.
When you're doing something like that, you don't.
No wasted work.
You're just kind of messing around. You're not stressed. You're not fighting on any time. You have to have it done by. You're willing to actually watch the whole video instead of trying to skip through, on your tutorials and miss stuff. You actually thoroughly go through with what you're doing. You're enjoying it. I have learned more on hobbies doing stuff like that than I ever have, like, taking a class or a training or something like that.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. There's no pressure. It's just, well, what am I going to learn today? Like what's going to happen, as opposed to I've got to prepare for this. There's no load. So yeah, I can definitely understand that. That's interesting.
Yep. So what would you say, maybe not a failure. You've already said, your failure, but how about a mistake? Something that didn't really make or break, but just throw
you straight in the trench.
Just a mistake that you feel like
you're that way. That is like, I'm going to do this, Good.
Well, now there's pressure. This is awkward. A mistake. Okay.
I got something on this, dude. It's so crazy.
Mistakes are something
from
that
our
you
last
don't
episode.
necessarily want to happen. Well, I'll tell the story anyway. You tell me
like
if it fits.
So I got to hear this.
I was deployed in 2009. On just a random show of force patrol.
Mistakes are wild.
Most of the people there are great people. Like, they have no idea what Afghanistan is. They just know their tribe. They're just good, humble people. And the Taliban and some of those other not so good people are not like that. And they prop up these tribal leaders and they do whatever. But to them, Sharia law and the Taliban and all that, like, it's very, very harsh. And us Americans, us Westerners, you don't beat women, you don't mistreat them, but the culture over there is very, very different, and they know how we feel about it. When we were just in the AO at this time, we had just established our presence, and so we didn't know who was who. We did our right seat ride with the outgoing unit, but we didn't really know anything. So we're on maneuvers, and we're just out doing our thing, and a couple of my guys see a guy roughing up a lady, and we stopped, and I felt justified in it. We stopped and was like, nope, you're not going to do that. Don't do that again. And the guy was terrified of us. We got all our armor on, most of our face are covered. So, okay, he said okay and stopped beating her while we were there. Well, he went back and told his whoever, and they told the local whoever, and then told the local L&O, and it just sort of got bigger and bigger. So it got back to us and saying, hey, you can't do that. You can't interfere at that level, and we were proud of what we had done. And so, I don't know, fast forward to the next rotation through in a show of force. He knows we're coming. It's a show of force. We want them to know we're coming. And he's standing out there with the same lady, and he's beating the fire out of her. Beating her, kicking her, and she's taking it like a champ, and my guys want to dismount, and I was like, I didn't want them to get in trouble. I was like, no, don't dismount, and we just kept on going, and in my mind, I was thinking, well, if we didn't stop in the first place, maybe she wouldn't have got beat that bad that day, so I don't know if that was a mistake. I feel like we did the right thing, but it didn't last, and she kept dealing with whatever, it's just that culture over there. But I was proud of what we did, and I'm still am. But then I'm thinking, maybe he beat her worse today. I don't know. It's just sort of an impossible scenario.
Yeah. That sucks, man.
That's tough when you're dealing with different culture, because it's so, it's just against everything in you. You can't rectify those types of situations in your mind. Your mind doesn't deal well with that. It's crazy.
I know. And especially, I've hinted to it, but airborne infantry, you were A-type. They cultivate that A-type. You were decisive. You move forward. You do not hesitate. So I felt like we did the right thing. It's my job to protect. That's what I wanted to do, and it just sort of bit me. And I guess it was a mistake. I don't know.
We were asking you about mistakes that are clear cut, not like impossible situations on the battlefield. Golly, take it to a whole new level.
I left it to you guys. I left it to you guys to see if it fit the paradigm. I leave it to you guys.
So you're saying your mistake was preventing a woman from being beat to death. That's a good one, Ramsey.
The outcome was she got beat more.
Yeah, I can see the potential in that, where you're not sure whether you made a mistake the first time or the second time. You look back on that.
Yeah, which one? That's right. Yeah, which one? So I'll leave that for the
philosophers. I thought you were going to say that you said screw it and did something about it the second time too.
I wanted to, but no, I didn't.
What do you think? What would have happened?
If I would have stopped again, I would have got a letter of reprimand, probably busted or something.
And then the third time, you don't think he could have took it, because she'd have been really getting
the third time, the third time I'd have shot him, then I'd be in prison. But
so is that kind of one of them things where they say, hey, good job, but don't do that again?
Yeah. And
obviously they knew why you did it.
Yeah, we're all the same. We all thought the same. My supervisors thought the same, but it's, our goal there was to show that we're their friends. We're their friends more than the Taliban, So,
which is hard to do if you're defying their culture, for sure.
Oh, yeah, it's impossible. It's impossible. Yeah. Which is why, it's the longest war we've had, which is Afghanistan. It's impossible.
Wow.
I could, Stephen, do you want me to tell the story about the e-tool and using the bathroom? I can tell that one. That was a mistake.
That's a fantastic story, and probably that will actually be on Facebook stories and Instagram stories.
I'm not telling it.
We can come to some agreement. How about only Instagram stories?
No. That's me and your secret.
Okay.
I had.
Well, you really gonna do that, man? You gonna leave Adam hanging like that? He don't even know what an e-tool is. I didn't either till you told me.
I'll tell him when we cut the feed. We can cut the feed. I'll tell him.
I'm sure there's going to be some viewers on here, and they're going to be going, what is this guy talking about an e-tool?
Well, there's going to be somebody from our BLET class being like, I can tell you what happened, and that's it. And then I'm going to send some private message and be like, I'll fight you right now. You don't share that with anybody.
I've had enough experience that I'm not going to ask.
Okay, good man. Good man. Good man.
I was going to tell you what, on the mistake thing, the other day, it was the first thing, and I'm telling you, it was just a feeling inside me. When Stephen asked me that question, you know, like, name a couple mistakes that you made in business that, you know, I don't remember if you said he had an impact on you or your worst mistake or whatever, and not in any sort of arrogance at all. The first thing that popped in my mind was, I haven't made any. And
yes.
And I realized after, and I was like, as soon as it popped in my head, I'm like, well, that's obviously not true in any way. So where did that come from? And it's just the desire to win. I think that people who want to win assign failures or mistakes, or I don't know, the word failure and mistake is a weird thing, because to me a mistake is something you knew to do correctly and you did it incorrectly. And failure is trying to do something you know nothing about and it doesn't work out. So mistakes, I don't think I've ever really been like, I know this isn't going to work, you know, I know this is a complete failure, I'm going to do it anyway. You know, I guess as a kid I definitely had some, but in business I always wanted it to work, and I always try to put my best foot forward. And I guess there's days when I knew I wasn't showing any ambition, or I knew I wasn't putting in the right amount of effort, and that's a mistake, because when you know to do it right, you're not. But ultimately, I think the reason why that crazy thought popped in my head was that anything that I failed at, I just considered it a lesson, you know, and I never assigned it the failure category, because that was, even though it didn't work and it was a failure. What's that guy's name? Ty Lopez. He said, and he may have come up with it or he got it from somebody, but he said that failing at something, or a mistake, or I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but he said is a test that you run too long. You know, just running a test on something, see if it's going to work, is not failure. But if you run that test too long and it's still not working, you're like, hey, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And that's
insanity.
A mistake. Yeah, exactly. Like he said, getting comfortable early on. Ramsey was saying that getting comfortable with being comfortable is not good.
Yeah, well, just to show my Trekkie roots, you know, you're quoting people that I don't know who that person is, but I do know who Jean-Luc Picard is from the Starship Enterprise. Don't judge. I can fight, so don't pick on me. He said, it's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. So, you know, just because we met with failure doesn't mean we necessarily chose the wrong path. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, you know, and what you were talking about, though, I will say, you know, choosing to see the world a certain way. So you said, I may have failed, but I saw it as a lesson. That's a perception issue. You can either, and I think this happens to a lot of people, this would be akin to me talking about a fight camp, or you with, you know, entrepreneurship. So I can either start something and then meditate on every failure, every hardship, every obstacle, and be like, I can't do this. Or you can just choose and I do think it is a conscious choice. I'm going to choose to view it differently. It doesn't mean you're going to choose to be everything's rosy and delude yourself. It just means like, all right, well, I know not to do that again.
Right.
I know not to trust that person again, you know, and you just choose it and move forward.
You just charge away from it.
I can empathize with that.
Yeah, take the
lesson.
Right.
That's right.
So here's one for you. What is your view on, like, when you're doing something, you're going against somebody else, or anything where there's a measuring stick involved? Do you feel like you want to beat everybody? Are you extremely competitive? Do you want to dominate, or are you trying to be better than everybody else, or are you just trying to be the best you can be?
Yeah, when I was younger, and that's why I was very intense, you know, as a young leader and as a young fighter. Like, it was, you know, I was staring across at somebody else. And there's an old adage, you know, and I'm sure it's from boxing and it's sort of carried over to MMA, like, when you look across the ring, the cage, whatever it is, you're not looking at anybody else. You're looking at yourself, and that's who you're fighting against. And it doesn't matter what style, it doesn't matter what his capability, it doesn't matter what size. The adversity is myself. And again, I'm not trying to be Confucius. I'm not trying to say whatever's counterintuitive, but if you're fighting against somebody else, you beat them, which is great. Or maybe they beat you. But when you wrestle with yourself, this is going to get dark, or this is going to get too deep maybe, but if you wrestle with yourself, you have to really know your weaknesses and what your flaws are and all that stuff, and attack those things. I do think, to sort of connect it to, the deployments that sort of shaped who I am, like I know what I'm capable of. I know what type of person I am deep down. When all the veneer and the facade is gone, I know who I am, and I can either give into that or I can consciously choose to fight it. And I choose to fight against all my flaws. I choose to fight against all my negativity. But getting back to your original question, like when I was young, it was a contest between me and somebody else. But now, like if I'm going to be a supervisor, ultimately I want to be a sergeant at the PD. My measurement isn't, well, how fast did this person get it? Or how fast did that person get it? To me, I feel like I'm ready. I want to go out and get it, and I'm going to compete with guys that have been there for 15 years and I've been there 3. So it's really about, I'm competing against myself, and that's it goes back to what I was saying earlier. That's a perceptional deal. How I see it, how I view it. I'm fighting against myself.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think is the reason why a person would have the approach of they're not necessarily trying to be the best they can be? Their goal is just to beat whoever they're in front of. Well, and maybe that doesn't require them to be at their best, but they just want to be the best at who's there.
Well, I think it's an easier challenge, and I'm not diminishing the person that they're competing against, but it's an easier challenge because it's right there in front of them. It's clear and it's quantifiable. That person, I can see that person. I see that he's good at this or he's bad at that. It's that person.
Wow, that's a good observation. I didn't realize that's what that was. That's crazy. Wow.
I get deep, brother.
Yeah, so I do think it's true, that when you're competing against an individual instead of yourself, winning doesn't require you to be your best necessarily. You could actually be your best and lose, but to beat the person across from you, maybe you don't have to be your best. So that means you're reaching your full potential with what you're doing. It's actually a lower goal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It seems like there's got to be something within you to cause you to choose to fight yourself instead of fight the opponent. Is that something you're born with, or what is that?
No, that's definitely cultivated. Because I've fought 6 times, but I've competed, in a lot of grappling and modern armored combatives, which is sort of a synthesis of fighting and just grappling. And I've lost to people that I shouldn't have lost against, and I've beaten people that I shouldn't have beaten. Just looking at the tail of the tape, just looking at the quantifiable metrics, and how do you rationalize that? How do you rationalize me losing to somebody who on any other day I can easily beat? I'm way more skilled. I'm stronger. I'm faster. Mentally and physically. How do you rationalize it? And it's because I didn't. To me, I feel like I didn't live up to my own potential, and I wasn't fighting against myself. Which if I would have, which would motivate me to choose to be the best that I can possibly be. Get up, never be tired. Well, I'm not never be tired, but never let that dictate whether or not I train, whether or not I'm putting my miles in on running. Like if I'm fighting just this guy, like I looked at him and I knew him and I can beat him. And I clearly didn't reach my potential, so I think it's a learned skill.
The Rock,
it's definitely a learned skill.
The Rock named his production company $7 Production because I guess he reached a point where he only had $7 in his pocket, and I guess that's when his resolve set in to, I guess, make something of himself, or that's the bottom. I don't remember exactly how he defined it. But naming your business $7 Production and knowing, like right now, that he's far exceeded those earnings and he's not having any financial difficulty, he uses that so he can continually fight against himself. That's what that's for.
I like that.
Just to remind himself.
I like that a lot.
of how it started. And he said he goes out every day and he trains like he's got $7 in his pocket, and he's practices being an actor like he's only got $7, and he's like, it's always that push, and he named it that to remind himself of that.
Well, and I think there's a deeper aspect to it. Not that I'm deeper than The Rock. I mean, he's the freaking Rock. But, you know, if you get comfortable, if you get complacent, then there's no motivation anymore. You know, and I think that's why you're always vying against who you are now to be better than who you could be tomorrow.
Yeah, even if you win it.
If you're...
I mean, someone that's got that view, they can win the fight and walk away with a ton of lessons and things they're going to go back and improve. It doesn't define them. Win or lose in the ring doesn't really define them. If they lose, they're going to go back and improve, and when they win, they're going to go back and improve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's funny. I take everything back to what I know. You know, I can name 3 or 4 fighters on the local circuits for, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, and they won fights they shouldn't have. And either meaner, you know, whatever the catalyst was, they won fights that they shouldn't have. And I can show you video from them when they were very, very, like an 0-1 draw or a 1-0 to them having 6 fights in, and they plateau very quickly. And it's because that whole time, when they should be going back to the drawing board, I'm not saying they had to lose, but their mentality was, yep, it works. Just swinging wild works. I caught him.
Oh.
And it's like, well, yeah, but you could be better. You know what I mean? So if you get lucky and you win, and you don't realize that you didn't win because, you know, you were technically good, you maxed out who you were. You win because you caught him or you were lucky.
Yeah. And
then it's going to stifle how much you can do and achieve. And I mean, I can name 3 or 4 right off the bat real quick, you know, and most people would know if they follow local MMA, they'd be like, yep, he's right. Yep. You know, and it's sad to see. It's really, really sad to see.
Yeah, getting lucky can be your worst enemy. I mean, going forward.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. How many people win the lottery and end up poor, divorced, you know, like alcoholics? Like, how many people, you know?
Yeah, I can't remember who I was listening to today on YouTube, but he said, I think it was Robert Kiyosaki. He said, if you're poor, you're poor. Doesn't matter how much money you have, you'll always be poor. There's a difference between being poor and being broke.
That's right.
Yep.
He said it's a mindset, and that's why, you know, 65% of all these athletes that have these multi-million-dollar contracts end up going bankrupt.
Yep. Because
of it's about the mindset.
Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki teaches that financial intelligence.
You can be the richest broke person in the world. You know, that's one thing he says.
Or rich.
But getting
unhappy,
back to the competition, I've found for me that, and I'll just use like doing push-ups for example. If I go right now and go out to my gym and say I'm gonna do as many push-ups as I can, I might do like 35 or 40 max. Like if I just go as hard as I can. But if I get you to come out there and you go first and you do 42, I guarantee you I can squeak out 43. Yeah. And I could have probably got 44, but if you did 42, I'm going to do 43. So I know that I can do more if I'm competing against someone, but the person I'm competing against actually has to be, I usually like to compete against people that are slightly better than me. And you usually can identify, if you've been around people and competed enough, you know where people stand as far as where you rank among them. And I always like to, like even if I'm working out, like maybe somebody who's just a little bit stronger than me, and that way I know that to compete, I gotta do everything I can, but it's still attainable in my mind, and like I can work hard enough to barely beat them. But for some reason, like I feel like if you can do 43 push-ups, you can do 45. But I'll stop at 43.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. And if that other competitor wasn't there, I would have stopped at 38.
Yeah.
So it's weird. I
think you can use an adversary, and I don't mean an enemy, but you can use an adversary as motivation. I mean, I think that's natural. That's why I say, like, I did that when I was young. It's hard to motivate, like, and that's what I'm saying, like, these great champions in any facet of any sport, of any whatever, they're the ones that they don't need the other person sitting there. They don't need somebody else pushing them. They're the ones that are like the 43 or the 45 that you're talking about. They don't need me or you there to test it. They're gonna push themselves because they're wrestling with themselves, and that's a superpower. And not many people. And I can't do it, but like in the specific realm that I've trained to do it in. Anything else, like, you know, whatever it may be that I'm not comfortable in, like I'm just like, nah, I'm not gonna initiate that traffic stop tonight. I'm done tonight. You know, I've hit my 3. Meanwhile, if somebody came up to me and be like, I bet I can do 15 tonight. Well, I bet I can too. You know, that pride's going to well up and that man's going to take over. But some people are just going to do it
themselves. And then you're going to end up with all kind of grandmas with brake light tickets.
Yeah, which is that's not my field, brother.
I heard a guy was being real arrogant about being at the top of his game, and basically you have heard people say it's boring at the top, you know, and that's what they're referring to, is because, man, when you first start out and there's all these people in front of you and you can just take them out one by one and you're at the top of your game going after them, take them down, but then when you get to the top, then you're just like, the only one you can fight against is yourself, but you know, you got to still fight off all these people that are coming for you, you know. So it does the same drive that you had in the beginning, taking those people down, it goes away, I think. I haven't had much experience being at the top of very many games, but the concept is there for me.
It's a solid concept, yes. I'm with you. Yeah.
One day
I think that's why there's a lot of champions
that boredom.
Adam,
I think that's why there's like a lot of champions that get up there and they defend once or twice, and then if they're successful, like they just lose. And I mean, I hate to quote a cliche, but they lose that eye of the tiger because they're not hungry. They're it. What are you hungry for? You're it. You know, and only the best can really motivate themselves past that.
Well, Adam, I got a story for you, man. This is about me and Ramsey when we was in BLET together. Going back to talking about this competition. So we get out here and we start doing PT. You know, the first couple of days of PT, everybody's doing their thing. And you kind of start to notice, you know, who you need to be matching up with. Like who do you need as your partner in order to really get somewhere. So me and Ramsey end up being partners, you know, in PT. And we were pretty much neck to neck on most things.
On everything.
I was going to say, I'm going to need Ramsey to confirm that. I don't trust you, Steven.
It's confirmed. It's confirmed. He's tenacious.
Okay.
I was really, really competing hard. Like, I wanted to beat him. And I felt bad because I didn't feel like that's how he was feeling about me. And it wasn't anything personal. It's just how I am. Like, I'm a competitive guy. Especially when it comes to stuff I've always done with, like, fitness and stuff. Like, I wanted to be the best. And I didn't get that same feeling from him, but yet he was matching me step for step, which was kind of frustrating. But I think, obviously, our instructor could tell. Like, it must be written all over me or something that I was trying to beat Ramsey, because he would get on me and he would be like, "You ain't doing nothing, man. You suck. You cannot beat him at anything." And I'm like, dude, like, I'm beating him sometimes. Like, we're pretty much winning just the same amount. But he didn't care, like, if it made sense or not. He knew if he said that I was going to work harder. Yeah. Because there were, you know, sometimes I would kind of slack off a little bit because, you know, we were kind of some of the most athletic people in the class. So you could slack off a little bit and still get through the workout. But he didn't want us to do that. He wanted everybody to work as hard as they could. And he knew the way he could get me to do that was to use Ramsey against me by threatening me that I sucked and couldn't beat him at stuff. And even though we were good buddies, I wanted to beat him.
Who was it?
Myers.
Let me tell you how creative Myers is. He didn't have to say one word to me. He didn't have to say a thing. He only had to yell at you, and I knew that you were going to pick it up, so it forced me to pick it up too. That's how creative it was. And I never showed anything on my face, but I was like, dang it, here comes Steven. Like, I got to hurry up.
Come on, man. Tell the truth now. Was you competing against me like I was competing against you?
Yeah, only when I knew that you were when I knew you were out for me.
Only after Myers put the
yes
smackdown on it.
Because yeah, like if you would run right beside me, I'd be content to just run right beside you. I'm good. I've got enough accomplishments in my life. Like, I'm good. Let's just coast this through. But every now and then, Steven would just sort of start creeping up a little bit further, and I'd be like, dang it, like, let's just coast, you know? He wouldn't let me. So it was really creative because he made me do it without even saying one word to me.
Wow. Two birds with one
It was
stone.
I felt almost kind of embarrassed that apparently I had, acted in some way to even put that in his mind that he could use that tactic on me, because I'm sure probably he wouldn't have known that about you. There had to be some reason why he thought he could do that to me.
Yeah, you had to tell.
I do think it was because you were hungry. Yeah, well, I think Steven even came up to me and said, I'm going to beat you this time. And I was like, okay. I was like, how about we just coast? I just want to get, let's get through this. My back's hurting. But, whatever.
Oh, my God. Start talking about your back now, huh?
I'm like 20 years your senior. I'm old.
Oh, that comes out. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh, my goodness.
So I have,
but that was a lot of fun, though, man.
Yeah. I was going to see if I had another question. I do have one. This is going to be good. We can end with this, I guess, or if you got any more, Steven. I was going to say, after everything you've done, it kind of goes along with Steven's story there. Does anyone accept your excuse? If you're just like, hey, I don't have the time, or, I'm tired, or like my back hurts, or does anyone accept an excuse from you after, the things you did in the military or MMA? Like you don't want to change the light bulb for your wife, I'm tired. She's like, really? I don't know.
I was just about to say, my wife doesn't accept any excuses. She accepts none of them. It's like she'll throw deployments in my face. She'll be like, you did this, you were hit with this, and I'll be like, oh, okay, let's take the trash out today. But I'm creative with like my friends, so I'm not gonna lie, like I'm very content where I'm at right now in life, So I'm putting on some pounds. I'm not killing myself in the gym as much as I used to. I'm not rolling or fighting as much as I used to. And so when I tried on my squad, I'm the father figure on B squad. I organize like these workouts for everybody, so we all try and do them together. And there's this one young kid. He used to be a bodybuilder. He's short, but he's tenacious. He's like Steven except short. And he wants to prove something against me. And we're good friends. But I'll be like, nah, I'm close to 40. My back's hurting, and it gets me out of a lot of competition stuff. So it works there.
Creative
but
excuses.
At the home, that's exactly right. But at home with my wife,
honored.
no. Right?
I'm honored at the fact that you would compete against me.
Good, you should be, because I did not want to. I didn't want to do any of it.
Well, I don't know if you.
Occasion.
I don't know if you were paying attention, but I think there was a few people that was awful close behind us that I think might have skipped a few laps here and there.
Yeah,
what do you think?
We talked about that all those years ago, and I believe it to this day. But again, whatever. They're clearly not competing against themselves because they cheated themselves, so they're competing.
See, there's my problem, man. Why do I even worry about that stuff? Worrying about other people and worrying about the person in third place.
Like, hey, you didn't put in the work. That's why.
It's okay and natural for a man to want to be congratulated on his accomplishments. And when somebody else comes up and be like, I did the same. No, you didn't. You're cheapening my accomplishments. Don't say that, It's okay to feel that
way. That's pretty good. Well, Ramsey.
That was good, man.
We thank you for coming on here, man. We was glad to spend a little bit of time with you.
Good meeting you. Good talking with you.
It was fun. I'm sure it had no relation to entrepreneurship, but at least we laughed.
Oh, this will be coming up for years.
This-
This is gonna be good.
It'll be fine, man.
Still got to learn
And
about the
maybe
E-tool.
we can get you on here.
That's right. That maybe in a couple years, brother.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple years, I'll tell you. You'll have me back on, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what. Yeah, maybe we can get you back on here, and you'll fill up to telling that story.
You got it. Anytime.
We can advertise our podcast as on this episode. Ramsey is going to talk about the E-tool.
As I approach
Sweet.
40, my pride is waning, so I would be more apt to share that story after 40.
All right, cool, man.
All right. Well, we'll see.
Well, thank you
guys.
for coming on.
It was fun.
That
Thank
was
you,
great.
guys.
Yeah, man.